All right, let's get into it. We're talking about a company that is just full of these incredible, almost unbelievable contradictions. I mean, this is a company that literally laid the wires for the 20th century, then turned around and built the foundation for the 21st. And in between all of that, it came dangerously close to completely destroying itself. It's really a story of absolute genius and total disaster, all on a truly epic scale. And yeah, that's the big question here, isn't it? How does a single corporation create the transistor, the laser, and the solar cell, and then later go and spend $100 billion on a failed Hollywood dream? It's a complete paradox. And to really understand it, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. You see, the first version of AT&T, well, it wasn't just a company, it was an empire. A massive, continent-spanning monopoly built not on land or armies, but on this vast, ever-expanding network of copper wires that connected an entire nation. And just look at how fast this all happened. In 1876, boom, Alexander Graham Bell gets his patent. Just 1 year later, the Bell Telephone Company is formed. By 1885, they spin up a subsidiary called AT&T with one mission: build the national long-distance network. And then, and this is a really clever corporate move, the child, AT&T, actually becomes the parent of the entire operation by 1899. This move basically consolidated all their power, building that empire from the inside out. Now, what's so interesting is how they cemented that power. Under their president Theodore Vail, AT&T didn't fight the government, they made a deal with it. Their whole philosophy right here in this quote was simple: let us be a government-sanctioned monopoly, and in return, we promise we will connect every single American. It was an absolutely brilliant strategy that locked in their dominance for nearly 100 years. And this deal created what everyone came to know as the Bell system. Think of it as total top-to-bottom control. They had Bell Labs for inventing the future, Western Electric for making every single piece of equipment, and they owned pretty much every phone line, local and long distance. For most of the 20th century, if you made a phone call in America, you were using their system. Period. So where did all the profits from that monopoly go? Well, they funded the single greatest research lab in history, Bell Labs. And this slide, I mean, it just shows you the impact. Look at these inventions: the transistor, the laser, the solar cell, even the fundamental theory for how cellular networks work. These are literally the building blocks of our modern world. A telephone company accidentally invented the digital age. But empires, no matter how powerful they are, they eventually face a reckoning. And for AT&T, that reckoning came from the one entity that was actually more powerful than itself, the United States government, which basically decided the company had just gotten way too big. To really get the scale of what happened, just look at this number. At the time of the breakup, the Bell system was worth $150 billion. In today's money, that's nearly $500 billion. It was and still is the largest corporate restructuring in American history. Just massive. So the crucial part is how the government split it all up. On January 1st, 1984, the old AT&T, also known as Ma Bell, was forced to spin off all its local telephone service into 7 brand new independent companies called the Baby Bells. Now, AT&T got to keep long distance and its crown jewels, Bell Labs, but just like that, overnight, it lost 3/4 of its assets. And those Baby Bells, well, they'd eventually grow up to become its biggest rivals. But the story doesn't end there. Not even close. In one of the most ironic twists in business history, AT&T would rise again. Not from its own strength, but by being literally consumed and reborn from one of its own children. This part is just fascinating. By 2005, the original AT&T was basically a shadow of its former self. Meanwhile, one of those baby bells, Southwestern Bell, or SBC, had been aggressively buying up its siblings. Finally, it bought its own parent, AT&T, and then made the incredible decision to adopt the iconic AT&T name for the new combined company. The student had truly become the master. Okay, so let's put you in the CEO's chair for a minute. The year is 2007. This new AT&T is just finding its feet. A guy named Steve Jobs walks into your office. He's got a device that he says will change the world, and he's offering you an exclusive deal. But here's the catch. He wants total control over the software, the customer experience, everything. That's something no carrier had ever given up before. So what do you do? Well, AT&T took the gamble. Verizon famously said no. They were terrified of giving up that much control over their network and their customers. But AT&T said yes. And that single decision secured them a 4-year exclusive on what became the most important consumer product of the 21st century. It was a massive, massive win for their wireless business, but it also permanently changed the game, handing power from the networks to the device makers. And the results? They were absolutely explosive. This chart really just visualizes the rocket fuel that the iPhone deal injected into the company. Subscriber growth just went through the roof, and AT&T established itself as a dominant force in this new world of mobile data. The second empire was in full swing. But just like the first empire, the second one got way too ambitious. Feeling the pressure of a wireless market that was starting to mature, AT&T decided its future wasn't in connecting people anymore, but in owning the movies and shows they watched on their devices. It was a pivot that would turn into one of the most expensive mistakes in corporate history. So the shopping spree began in 2015. First up, DirecTV. The idea was to make AT&T the biggest pay TV provider in the world. The price tag for that? A staggering $67 billion. A huge bet on satellite TV right as everyone was starting to cut the cord and move to streaming. But they weren't done. Oh no. 3 years later, they went even bigger, buying Time Warner. We're talking the parent company of HBO, CNN, and the Warner Brothers movie studio for $85 billion. The idea on paper was to create synergy. Own both the pipes and the premium content that flowed through them. On paper, AT&T was now a Hollywood powerhouse. And the result of that shopping spree? A mountain of debt. It topped $180 billion. The strategy just didn't work, the cultures clashed, and the company found itself financially crippled and strategically lost. The second empire was crumbling fast. So what did they do? They retreated. AT&T unwound its huge media bets, sold off the Hollywood assets, and returned to a surprisingly simple strategy. Get back to doing what you've always done best. Build the best networks. Okay, so where does that leave them today? As of late 2024, you can see AT&T is number 3 in wireless market share. But what's really crucial here is their key asset, listed right there, fiber plus wireless convergence. They're no longer trying to be the biggest. They're trying to be the most integrated. This right here is the core of their entire strategy today. The big idea is to own the 2 most important connections in your life, your home internet through fiber optics and your mobile service through 5G. By bundling them together, they create a customer who is way less likely to leave. It makes their whole ecosystem sticky. And you know what? The numbers really back it up. This chart shows that the churn rate, that's the percentage of customers who leave, is just 0.83% for their bundled customers. That is way lower than the industry average. These customers are simply more loyal, and that makes them more valuable. The strategy seems to be working. Which brings us right back to where we started, with a paradox. AT&T's big adventure in Hollywood was a complete financial disaster. It destroyed an estimated $80 billion in value. But it forced the company to rediscover its core identity. It taught them, at an almost unimaginable cost, the simple lesson of focus. So the question is, was that lesson worth the price?